Dharti Tripathi is a well-rounded business leader with technical, analytical, and operations experience who drives digital strategy and implementation to grow revenue while scaling and streamlining operations across industries. She's an entrepreneurial-minded senior executive with experience leading large-scale digital businesses with responsibility for commercial, product, engineering, and operations spanning multiple regions, vendors, and in-house workforce. A successful track record of building teams and reducing costs to improve bottom line performance, generating revenue, and improving customer experience through digital transformations. Currently serving as Vice President, Chief Digital Transformation Officer, leading global digital transformation, vision, strategy, and execution to grow a 1.2 billion digital solutions portfolio and platform that is leveraged across GE Healthcare, supporting imaging, life care solutions, ultrasound, services segments, and enterprise applications. Dharti, you have an exceptionally impressive resume, so I'm excited to hear what we'll be talking about. And for the audience, we will be doing this as a fireside chat, not as the normal presentation mode. So just a quick reminder, if you have any questions at any point, post those in the questions tab and we'll get to those throughout this conversation. And if you just have a comment or just want to get included in the conversation, use the chat and we can have that going on at the same time. But Dharti, I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to BTOES Healthcare Live.
Thank you, Andy. I'm very excited to be here as well. So thank you, appreciate the invite and looking forward to discussions.
Absolutely. So let's just start out with a good question just to start the conversation rolling, and that what does business transformation through digital mean to you?
It's a great question, Andy, and I'll break it apart in two different answers because digital, it's a different meaning to different people. For me, the transformation in how digital supports is in two areas. One is how you leverage the data. You gather that data from every single touch point you have with your customers. You apply digital technologies such as IoT, you build the platform, you add AI to it, you embed that into your core value generation processes in the business, and then you take it to your product and services that you give to your customers. That's where the innovation comes. That's where the value is generated internally and externally. So to me, that's where how you change your workflows internally, how the team operates in every part of the business that drives the reduction to the cost, which is where you are driving the impact to bottom line. One example is in industrial world, this is where last 5 years spending and how we provide services to our field, how we provide services in operations. We can add predictive analytics to that. We can provide some of the planned maintenance, unplanned maintenance with the predictive, we can reduce the cost. So to me, that is the one side of the transformation. It's the how you are driving the progress in and making some of the changes to your operational KPIs, but then driving direct impact to your financial KPIs. The other side is the revenue side, right? So there's always the two sides of the P&L, the cost and the revenue. As you build that AI and build the predictive analytics to drive the reduction in the cost to your operation with the platform, with the cloud, enabling that on any other customer's operations where they are not using those services from you. They could leverage that same application, same benefits, you're generating the value, but you're introducing a completely new model for your business where they could be actually leveraging that application on a software as a service basis. So that to me is driving the transformation, opening up a new channel, a new business model for your company where now you are, generating revenue. This is the transformation that's supporting now on the P&L on the revenue side. So as you transform your internal processes, the internal operations, you build new applications, and then you take it to the platform, you make it cloud enabled, you make it available to deploy it at customer data center, you make it available to deploy on your machines, but it's not embedded. You are making it as a software, as a service. You generated a new business model. So two sides for me is it's how you are driving and transformation and bringing the value to your organization.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot there. There's a lot there. A lot of good material there to dive into. I think one area that I think would be fascinating to hear from you about is you mentioned IoT. Now, is that the Internet of Things? Is that what you're getting into?
Yeah. So it's the platform, right? So typically, in the traditional world, when you have certain applications that you are using internally, especially in the industrial environment, to run your operations, to get the visibility of, some of the assets that are running in the field, in this medical devices that you have, the IV you have in field, those applications traditionally you use internally. You provide monitoring services to your customers. You provide maintenance repairs. With the platform, you actually harness the data across multiple modalities. So you have X-ray, CT, MRI, all these machines. You collect the data. Now you have cross-modality data. On platform, you actually transform that data. You can add certain services to build a 360 view of patients. So you can bring genomics, pathology, machine data, all together, EHR data, and you now have a 360 patient view. Traditionally, we harness that data, but we actually use majority of the time internally. Now you can actually take that data, apply AI, and you can help clinicians with the better accuracy. If you can help radiologists to prioritize their workflows, because you're embedding those intelligence into the clinical applications. You can embed those intelligence into some of the applications that are used in the servicing operation. And not only you can use that data for your machines, for your own devices, but you can make it device agnostic, and you can help the hospitals, the providers, to not only use that application for the machines that you have provided, but it could be used for the fleet of the devices that are at the hospital site. So it could be Philips, it could be Siemens, it could be GE. So now you have completely changed the dynamics where your applications focused on the output and value that it was generating for your machines, to now it's giving the output and value to the fleet of the machines that are at hospital environment. That's the value of building the platform. The other part, not all the companies can provide pretty much value and address all the use cases in the patient or provider space, the different personas within the hospital's environment. When you bring the platform, you are enabling the provider for you to become the one-stop shop, because they can then bring any other third parties to run natively on your platform and generate that value. So they don't have to now work with different companies to integrate into their EHRs and EMRs. And this is one of the biggest pain point for CIOs when you talk to them in the provider space. So platform opens up that ability to create the ecosystem that can give you the value, and it generates the value across the horizon. Now you are addressing the challenges that hospitals have in how they can work with the patients, how they can triage, how they can have the post-op, some of the remote operations and management that they would like to do. There are so many applications out there, but then you have to work with them, you have to integrate. That takes up the time to actually get the advantage. With the platform, it allows you to actually increase the speed to market and bring some of these product and services to your door, because you can pretty much work across the board.
Fascinating. Now, when we talk about digital transformation within healthcare, I feel like there's this underlying assumption that, maybe not assumption, but with digital technologies in such a human-centered field of healthcare, do you think that with such digital transformation that there is a removal of a human interaction element, or do you think it instead enhances the human element of healthcare?
Yeah, I get these questions a lot. applying AI, are we just eliminating the need for human intelligence in the process? And to me, I think data and AI actually will help enhance the workflows.
Okay.
It will help enhance some of the use cases in which the time it takes for different personas in the hospital space. We have radiologists, we have clinicians, we have a specific, needs pre-post surgery virtual care. With pandemic, the customer behavior and patients' behavior have changed. They are now a lot more used to getting convenient and self-service. Televisit is another area that we have never anticipated that patient would actually pursue engaging with general physicians in that capacity. To me, the way data and AI is going to help is as the capacity, we don't have that. The demand is getting higher and higher, but the capacity on the other side, we are having challenges. So how do providers, combat that? With the technology, we are going to be able to help speed up some of these workflow, improve the efficiencies, improve the accuracy, so that we can do a lot more with less. Let me just take a very real example. There is a patient archival system where we archive all the images. The radiologist is supposed to review those images. They are supposed to provide diagnostic. There is a report that's get generated, and it gets to general physician. The way AI can help is it helps prioritize the workflow. So specific image, if the AI detects that this image has 90% chance of pneumothorax, it bumps the entire workflow. Now the radiologists know, okay, this is something that I need to look at first, and then it's a 90% confidence. It helps them immediately make some of the diagnosis to confirm what the AI already provided as a recommendation. So giving the intelligence and insights like that to technology will expedite, and it allows us to provide the access to care across the care continuum faster and better. But it doesn't remove the need for the radiologist, because we do want to make sure we are in a regulatory, we are talking about human life. So yes, the AI can help to get to that accuracy. It can reduce some of the traditional, work that used to take place across the different steps in the clinician's workflow, but it's not going to completely eliminate. You look at the pre-op, surgery or post-op surgery, some of the procedures. With the technology, we can reduce the time, we can help improve the accuracy, but that's not gonna take away the work that's actually we want somebody on site doing. So I do believe that data AI will enable the healthcare space to get the better access to the care with the accuracy, and to lot more patients in across the world. It's not gonna completely take away the human side of the insight, as well as the support that's needed to get that care to the patient.
Well, absolutely. Well, that's you provide a lot of evidence in how that can actually amplify the human experience, which is very I mean, it's the future, right? Because I'm sure when they started doing X-rays and doing all of these, now what we consider normal healthcare practices back then, I'm sure the culture was like, whoa, how can we understand the human experience if we're looking inside of them? So I'm sure that right now we're on that kind of edge of the next big thing. So next question. How have you seen customer expectations change, particularly after the last 18 months of disruption?
Well, I'll tell you that it started with home as well, right? With the COVID-19, our lives have changed in the way we work, the way we shop, the way, we used to, go through a lot of things from entertainment perspective. It has changed. Same thing in healthcare. Our expectations from patients, they have changed. And the biggest acceleration in this change, I believe, across, if you look at the multiple industry, whether it's a retail, whether it's education, or payments industry, or take healthcare. Healthcare, I think, by far is the biggest change that we have seen, and that change has brought also the disruption, and how companies are trying to cope up with this surge in the demand, the way they have started leveraging automation, the way they have started leveraging AI in multiple use cases across the care continuum. Absolutely. I feel we in healthcare have seen a big shift on provider side, where they did not want to take the data outside of the premises. And now there is a lot more appetite to have the applications running on cloud, giving those access to the applications to radiologists and clinicians outside of the hospital environment. That's a big shift in terms of the behavior that the providers and our customers are seeing. And as a result, I feel that we are just at a starting point, but there is a huge change in terms of across the payer, patient, and provider interactions. We are going to see a tremendous shift in how we operate and how we communicate at different touch points.
Yeah. Would you think that it's not so far off base to kind of compare what we're going through to maybe, I don't know, on the same level of scale, but kind of like similarly to the Industrial Revolution in previous times? Do you think it's kind of like a similar shift in how we're going to have to perceive healthcare, or is that maybe is that too much of a hyperbole?
I think I worked for renewable energy for 2 years prior to joining my current role at GE Healthcare. And I'll say that if you look at the industrial, evolution, even in
oh, there we go. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt, but your video turned off there for a second. So, but you're back now.
Oh, okay. I did not touch anything.
We're back now. Everything's working, so that's good.
Yeah. So to me, as I look at the industrial side, given my experience in renewable energy, even the way we operate, the way our customers, are changing, and their needs are changing. I see the change in some of the way we work internally, and how some of the solutions that we provide to our customers. So if you ask me, there are some changes that are coming in healthcare. They are going to stay, and we are going to actually, have some of these solutions that are going to be here for us, and the way we operate, it's gonna stick. There are some changes, where as things, change, it will be the way we used to operate, right? So for me, I don't think I can pinpoint and say, hey, this is just the time, and it's not something that's gonna stick around for the future. I personally believe that some of the evolution we are bringing in radiology's workflow, in pre-post, surgery, in specifically the clinician's workflow, some of the applications that are used, the way patient, engages with the general physicians, the way we interact with our providers, and the digitization that's coming in that space, and the regulatory environment, where there's a lot more appetite and accelerated way that we are able to get, FDA approvals on some of these applications. I feel they are going to be the norm that's going to stay. There are certain parts of the changes that's driven through the specific, changes that are coming with the pandemic that might, shift.
Fascinating. We have a question from the audience. How do you bridge the digital divide for the patient population caused by socioeconomic and age factors?
I would say data is at the center in how you actually segment and how their interactions are with, whether it's a provider space, patient space, or in this case, the hospitals and payers. We have created, we call it a clinical, it's a CDIP, it's our platform for a clinical data integration. We have 360 patient views. It comes from EHRs, it comes from pathology, genomics, images, where you have pretty much entire spectrum of that patient, the life cycle in terms of their history, where we are able to at one-stop shop give the recommendations, come up with a new way of giving them the potential recommendations in specifically, whether it's on the radiologists, clinicians, general physician space, patient engagement applications, which we are using it internally. So to me, the segmentation in how, depending on the patient's age, depending on their history, depending on their preferences in the past, you pretty much could, apply that AI and embed that in a specific workflows to get the advantage of what to anticipate, where, in the use cases across the care continuum, you pretty much know that how to interact with that patient in that category, in that cohort, right? So to me, leveraging the actual data and the pretty much the value that you can generate from that is going to be really important for companies to be successful, to determine how to interact with that patient of that segment, how to provide them that recommendations and services, how we can actually drive the value for that segment of the patient, so that you are treating them with their specific preferences, where they want, how they want, and you're driving the value.
Yeah. In such a digital world, yeah, the data and then the patterns and understandings that we can have of patients and ourselves through that leveraging of data, I think becomes critical to digitizing healthcare. I see that. So the question, the little comment afterwards, referring to the digital divide caused by lack of access. So I believe the question, how do you digitalize? Let me make sure I can word this correctly. When it comes to digital transformation in healthcare, when there's a lack of access caused by socioeconomic and age factors, do you think, is there a solution for that, or is there a place for that in this digitally transformed future?
I will take an example that I have recently came across, and it's one of my close friends from Kellogg. He has just started, it's a startup that he wanted to get the perspective in terms of the model and what he's after. So he reached out, and this is specific to the question on the age and the access. In India, we have probably, and he had given me specific percentage in terms of the lack of access to general physician community in the rural areas, and the fact that we talked about the age. The one discovery, as he was, putting this patient engagement model for that specific rural areas, it was a unbelievable discovery that yes, we don't have in these villages general physicians, we don't have clinics they have to go miles and miles before they can actually have access to the doctor. But they do have, believe it or not, smartphones. They do have, and that was even for India, and I have lived there for 22 years, and I pretty much visit, and I have seen the evolution in terms of the usage of the phone. And thanks to Reliance and Jio, where they have given, the access to internet, even these, rural areas at a very comparative, lower cost. So to me, absolutely, back then, if somebody came and asked me like, hey, 60 plus, 50 plus years age, would they be able to take the advantage of, smartphone, and would they be even using the smartphone? I could never think about my parents using smartphones, and both of them use, surprisingly, iPhone really well, and probably they use social media more than even I do, right? So
Yeah.
yes, back then, if you asked me a few years ago, I would have, said, can we do the televisit, type of application where certain segment even would be entertaining and would be seeing the doctors through their smartphones, and kind of helping triage and give them the access to the care. Ideally, I would have said no, but things have evolved. Smartphones and the access to that has completely changed the dynamics, where now his model is to connect the doctors to the patients in a way where it's a shared platform. So now the doctors that want to actually get on that platform to give the access to mass, they could register. And then the patients who do not have access, where they have to go and walk for miles before even they can actually have a simple, diagnosed on whether they are having fever or cold, whether it's a viral or bacterial, now they have that access, right? So I feel that digital, will help, one, reduce the cost, increase the availability, right? Increase the accuracy. All of that will internally, help to take it to the mass. And digital, with the segmentation, by age, in the past, yes, you could have said that certain age would not be as open to get the care in a certain way. But with pandemic, that has shifted. Even, and I'm going to take my parents' example. I've never thought that they would do televisit, but during the pandemic, they were afraid to get out, and rightly, and they started making the use of, the technology. They started seeing the others use the technology. So that has kind of shifted the behavior. Now, are we saying that that completely changes, everything is going to be digital? No. But I think where we were to where we are headed, definitely there is a shift in the behavior, shift in the mindset, and that is also applicable to certain ages, and also the areas, the underserved communities. I think that's also going to have an impact, and it's going to actually help penetrate to more, and it's going to get the access to more. So that's how I see it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think when technology can facilitate a human-to-human interaction that before would have barriers of space or even language, I think that is an exceptional. That reminds me. I was working on an innovation project in a hospital, and I was shadowing a nurse that was using a iPad on like wheels that had like an ASL interpreter on the iPad speaking to the patient. And I remember I was sitting there, I was like, this is crazy. I feel like I'm in like 2001 Space Odyssey right now. Like because then the iPad would like had its own, the interpreter had like a controller that would move the iPad on the wheels. So I think that is, along with your example of your parents using iPhones, with that kind of ubiquitous technology that no one can misinterpret, right? Like
Yeah.
communication, face-to-face interaction, even if it's facilitated through a virtual screen. I think that is, you're absolutely correct. Like that is only going to enhance healthcare. I also feel like though, like sometimes certain technologies can make the process longer or maybe more complicated. But I think that's just with any new technology, you have to iron out those kinds of processes. And I'm thinking about, with my parents, sometimes they can do some things on technology. I'm like, I didn't even know how to do that. And then there's some modes I'm like, oh man, like it's just, you just gotta copy and paste it over into this screen. But yeah, my parents could probably give me a hard time for that. Another question from the audience. How do you overcome the bias introduced by input data in developing the AI algorithms for predictive analytics? One of our presenters spoke on this earlier, Swadeep Singh, and I think this is a fascinating topic that I'd love to hear what you'd have to say about it.
Yeah, one, to get the better prediction, you need to have the variety of the data, right? Input coming in. And that is definitely what we are seeing as the challenge to get that. And some of the bias that comes when you have a very concentrated space in which how you are getting the data. So to me, one of the big change internally also we are focusing on how we can get that variety. So input coming in, you have you reduce that bias and you have a holistic view of potential different use cases, different categories of the attributes coming in. So you you are reaching to the conclusions, and what's coming in, you are able to actually drive the better outcome and the predictions and the confidence level that you can get coming out of the model. So to me, I think there is no a single simple answer I wish I could say, but the best way to remove that bias, and then make sure the input that you have in building the algorithms, try and get the variety, which at times is challenged. That's why one of the area that we are really focusing on as we enhance our Edison platform, where we are building the service, and the service is going to help us get the data. It's going to integrate the data from multimodality. It's going to get the data from multiple areas, which allows you to have that variety of the use cases, the segments, and enables you to come up with the different insights and recommendations.
This concern of algorithmic human interpretation, I think is common. We had a whole presentation on it, I think, earlier yesterday. And coming from a social scientist background, that's something that I kind of think about too. It's like when you have a human identity that even the human themselves doesn't always understand, this is such an interesting idea to then create not necessarily like numbers, but this data set that can then interpret and then predict certain health outcomes. I think that there is some incredible, very impressive algorithms that are saving lives. And it's just it's an interesting thought process for me, and I think you're alluding to it. It's like it's still developing and it's not perfect, but it's definitely useful. So I mean, I'm not necessarily sure if I have a question there, but just coming from my own background of social science, creating data sets to predict human identity and human health experience is a very interesting, uh, thing to do. Yeah, so I don't know if you have any other comments on that. I'm just kind of processing my own thoughts with that because it's I think where healthcare is going, and I'm not sure as of right now. I don't think it's perfect, but it's definitely improving. Um, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You're skeptical, side of this, that it's interesting.
Mhm.
How much do you trust, and how much it's
Mhm.
to what extent that it will be automated, where it completely eliminates the human interaction in
Mhm.
the process. Um, I personally see that AI and the insight and the identity of the patient, and based on the historical trend of a similar patient in that cohort with the similar conditions, it could give you the predictions of the likelihood of you having certain conditions, and it could help diagnose, right? That in itself, it's increasing the process for anybody to reach to that conclusion. But does that mean that it's going to eliminate the need for somebody to come in and do that confirmation and do the diagnose? I personally do not think that we are at the state that you can completely eliminate that human aspect, but it's improving and it's getting better and better. Take a simple, use where this started in Amazon's journey. We used to get, recommendations based on our preferences of the type of category and the purchases we have done in the past. It's a simple algorithm that's applied. They have identified our pattern and the behavior at the certain time of the month, week, days, and then they also have a cohort of similar characteristics of the consumer. That's their preferences, their purchase behaviors, how it increased, how it decreased. Based on that, they have been providing recommendations. But if you look at the history versus over a period of time, I used to get sometimes recommendations. This is back 10 years. And I'm like, why would I even get this? I would never, purchase this. Yeah. And then now, I think if you look at the improvements, it's getting closer and closer. And now, even if I'm getting recommendations that, hey, do you want to buy this? You bought this, X time, maybe it's time for a refill, right? So to me, that's the improvement where they are keep feeding the data, they are enhancing the model, and that's enhancing the understanding of the needs, and then providing that recommendations. So you apply that into looking at the patient jacket, right? Everything that we do for our health, all the data is captured somewhere. Now you have a 360 view of that. You have a similar category by the age, by the the longitude, latitude. I mean, you take a look at that cohort of the patient, and then you look at the similar conditions there. Yes, over a period of time, as we collect the data, as we harness, as we exchange, as we refine it, normalize it, it's going to get better and better. But is there going to be ever a time that you can just completely take human out? I don't think so, because it's one thing when you are giving the recommendations you're buying, and it's another thing when you are diagnosing somebody and you're giving them, you're putting them through the surgery, or you're giving them the appropriate medication, even the dosage, right? We have an amazing application at a fleet level where it actually looks at the patient data and it determines what kind of dosage to give before they go through any procedure. It definitely provides and it recommends, right, given the historical same patient cohort. But then somebody actually pushes the button and makes that call to then put that protocol in it. So to me, that are we gonna ever reach to a state where we are gonna just allow the applications to push that and provide the dosage? I don't think we are there yet. But it's definitely getting better and better in terms of the confidence level on how much the variation, the clinician at point in time that changes the actual protocol to what the system already recommended in terms of the dosage that should be given, right? So I feel like certain things is just evolving. Now, if you look at another side of and this is purely on the device, right? There are certain protocols, and this is not tied to the dose, but the way at a fleet level that you set all the machines that we have automated end to end, right? Because it's not something that's directly impacting the patient. It's the customization and setting that they used to do manually, machine by machine, which we automated the process, and now it's just you push one button and the entire fleet of the hospital machines, it just changes and it pushes them to one set of protocol. So I think it depends on the use cases. It depends on the impact, where you can see 100% automation and you can take away the human intervention versus, certain areas and use cases where you will still have human intervention.
Man, I can tell we could probably talk about that for a long time.
Me too. It's a passionate topic for me too.
Man, it's so fascinating. So we have actually several questions coming in. First one, and also, I mean, we can also move on to digital transformation of business if you want, or we can stay on this AI topic of healthcare. So just let me know. But we did have a question from the audience, and they said, how do you manage the resistance to change in accepting the digital transformation by physicians due to their mixed experience in using the EMR?
Change is hard across the board, right? Unless and until they see the value that's bringing to them in their set of processes and the day-to-day, how they interact, what information they feed versus what information they have to gather from patients. So in the specific, this question is about general physician, but in specific cases, and it's specifically on EMR, we already know changing, changing the EMR EHR system is in any environment. It's on itself. It's a huge initiative. Changing the workflows in itself, it's a huge initiative undertaking that any individual clinic or the provider space that would have to take in place. So depending on what kind of change you are bringing for them, the ease of use, the ease of implementation, and the value that it brings to them, I think it's going to help drive the change. There is an appetite for change, but I think it has to be it should start with what's the value that you are bringing with the change, how it's impacting their persona, what's the scope of the change, and them understanding the value prop, right? In a lot of our digital solutions, we have hypotheses that we are gonna, with digitization, we are gonna improve X percentage in the productivity in the workflows. We are gonna improve Y% of the accuracy in the predictions and the diagnosis, right? Until and unless you have built the proof of concept and you have shown, the ease of the implementation, the ease of the way they use this and the value that they're going to get from productivity, it's definitely harder. So the behavior is moving towards value-based, outcome-based digital applications that they would like to take it into their day-to-day environment. So the more we focused on building that POCs, generating the evidence, the proof of the evidence, it's better to then take it to mass to kind of help them understand that, hey, this is the hypothesis we have proven. Here is the proof of concept through which we have generated the evidence, and here is how it has changed, and they have seen the value in whatever the value you're bringing, the productivity, the accuracy, or the quality of the, let's say the AI is helping with the quality of the image and the scan time, or the AI is helping, change the time that it takes to scan going through the procedure. Until and unless you have proven that, oh, it used to take 5 minutes to now it's 3 minutes, and here are the evidence that we have generated through the proof of concept, it's hard. So for me, if we really want to drive that change in the behavior, I think the big focus should be on the building that evidence, with the proof of concept, where they can see it. People are generally tend to change when they see things, they feel it, and then they want to try and apply it, right? So that's my perspective on it.
Yeah. And I think you're right on the money too with change is hard, especially for experts and practitioners like doctors and clinicians. That was something, we saw as well when we were doing innovation projects at the hospital. It's like, even if you have a great idea, you have to convince people to use it. And that's sometimes harder than the actual idea itself.
Yeah.
Man, we got some good stuff here. We're getting close to the end of our time, so I think we can do a couple more. So how are you collaborating with others to help drive successful business transformation?
It's a great question. Look, transformation, it's not something that can be done, by one company, and you have all the capability internally. You can, uh, address pretty much all the use cases across, right? So collaboration in this space is tremendously important for the collective success, right? You look at, Amazon model, you look at, Google in how they have built the services, AWS, right? There is a contribution and there is a consumption model. In this space, I see, taking the same advantage of the contribution and consumption model in a way where you open up your platform, you allow others to participate on your platform, and you are providing the value to your customers by giving that 360 one-stop solution. So any provider that works with you, they can, they can bring third parties, they can bring research, academic partners, they can bring startups, developers, who wants to develop applications and make it available to your marketplace, reach out to your consumer base. But, they are all natively running, on your platform. So you are actually providing your core values, right, to some of the applications you have. But by, allowing that open ecosystem and that collaboration with others, now you're giving access to many use cases that the provider can just have that working with you, right? So to me, that's like the fundamental in how you can bring successful transformation, working with your customers by giving them the opportunity to collaborate with you and work with anybody that they have. Potentially they want to bring it, into their platform.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's such, as I mentioned earlier, kind of to introduce the session. Not that, everything is connected. So collaborating in such a digital global world is necessary, because if you're not doing that, you probably aren't doing something right. I think we have time for one more question. So to end this out, and then we can have, ending remarks. What about transformation internally within the company? How can we encourage that? And then as a sub question underneath that, should we be changing KPIs or process to support this?
Yeah, in the beginning, I talked about two transformations, right? One is you start internally, then you open up the channel to take it externally. One impacts your bottom line, right? So you're improving on operational KPIs, your productivity, and that impacts the cost side of the equation. The other one is you open up the channel, you create that ecosystem for others to come and work with you, and that creates another channel of revenue. So now focusing on the cost side, right? How you to drive that change internally, which is very important because you start internally first, right? Then before you go out, it starts top down, right? At the CEO level, I think you really need to make sure that the strategy and the goal, everybody at all level, it's aligned. There is a clear understanding of the scope on what we want to change, where we want to focus, and what we are looking to impact with that change. I think that in itself is a first big step to have, so people know what's expected. Second, I think big part in the transformation is the understanding of the investment and where we are making that investment, and then having the constant with the right set of KPIs, say do on that, right? Because there is a business that we have to run, and then there is this new transformative effort that's going inside. So a lot of times we talk about the strategy, we talk about the change, but unless and until you run both in parallel and have because when you're running the business, you have handle on the operational and also some of the financial KPIs, and that's something we look at. We do the pacing, week over week, month over month. Similarly, with transformative, initiative, we have to make sure that there's alignment on those KPIs and there is a ongoing update to see where things are and where things are going, and if there is a further need for prioritization. Because across the board, everybody has to focus on some of the things that we have to make sure the business is going, but then they are putting the effort and investment on the transformation. So having that clear line of sight and then ongoing update to keep that momentum, it's really important to have the successful transformation. And then, the big part that I see is, of course, the top-down strategy, the investment, and then having the right skills, depending on what that scope of the change that we are bringing, to have that right skills within the organization to drive that change, to change the way we work, to change those processes and build the automation in the tool, right? So that's my perspective, Andy, in terms of, what some of the areas to focus on for successful transformation.
Oh man, well, Dharti, thank you so much. I can tell you have an exceptional amount of experience in this field, and I'm sad we only have 45 minutes. Actually, we've gone a little over, which I've been texting Brian, and he says that's a-okay because this has been such a good fireside chat. Wasn't able to answer all the questions the audience had, so please, if you guys have any questions, I'm sure Dharti, they can reach out to you on LinkedIn or another social media website like that to continue that conversation. As we end this fireside chat, are there any last thoughts or comments that you want to leave us with?
I'll just say one last statement, right? Change is constant, right? So the companies that are successful is they are coping up with this change, and digital is, core at where and how we want to drive that change. So that's just my last comment. I truly believe that, and where the companies, focus on that, I think they are going to be able to compete and maybe stay ahead of the competition. And I'm very excited to be part of GE Healthcare, because I think strategically we have made great investments in how we are focusing on digital, how we are focusing on platform, and enabling our providers and patients to get that better outcome and access to the care and focus on that precision health. So that's my last comment, Andy. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been great discussion, and I really enjoyed talking to you.
Absolutely, and we've learned so much already. So thank you so much, Dharti. We're so hopefully we can see you again at a future BTOES event. But again, thank you so much. You've shared some valuable expertise and insight. So with that, that is the end of the first session of the day. I will start closing out this session, and also unfortunately, Dr. Pinky, our next session, was unable to make it. So this is actually the end of BTOES Healthcare Live, and honestly, I think it is a phenomenal end to this event. Dharti, Tripathi, exceptional expertise, gave us some wonderful things to think about and some things to leave with. So with that, I just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has joined us over these last 3 days, or just for 1 or 2 days, however much was useful to you. We hope that you can leave with some new learnings, leave with some plans, maybe some strategies or some new ideas that you can implement in your own healthcare environment. It's been an honor and a privilege to chair this event. I'm Andy Tilstra, CIO of Creativity Effect, and also this event was brought in partnership with Nintex. Nintex was proud to sponsor this, and if you remember the first session, we heard from Eric Hill, one of the directors at Nintex. So just want to say again, huge thank you to all of our presenters, to BTOES, to Proqis, to Brian for helping or coordinate this, and a huge support and thank you to you for joining us, audience members. If you have any questions or if you want to continue the conversation, we will be doing so on social media, on LinkedIn, so look out for that. And I'm sure any of the presenters today, yesterday, and the day before would love to continue that conversation as well. Again, a huge thank you, can't thank you enough for joining us. I'm Andy Tilstra, and we'll be seeing you next time at the next BTOES event. Thank you guys, and take care.